are familiar with have what they call sporadic ALS. 90% of the people in the country or in the world that are diagnosed are sporadic individuals. The young lady who is sitting here taking pictures, Kinga,
taking a video,
is joining us from Toronto tonight with her friend Renee. And they're here because of Facebook communication with Deb. Deb told me yesterday in a conversation, because we talk just about every day, we don't do Facebook. I'm too old for that, I guess. I'm still got to work on it. And but there was a group of people, and there's a gentleman by the name of Mr. Olson. Kinga?
Yeah.
John Olson?
Thomas
Olson. And a group of his family members and a few others are yesterday or the day before met with the Facebook people to tell the ALS story to Facebook. Facebook is one major social networking device that the ALS folks have been able to use to talk to each other, to get to meet each other. Kinga lives in Toronto, Deb lives in Wellsville, but they keep in touch on a regular basis, and I know that there's a large number of you that are Facebook users and members, and I know that the three ladies back here in the corner are still waiting to meet Deb. We'll make that happen. We'll get there. But most of what Deb is dealing with right now is welcome to the first Hearts of ALS event. Several months ago, we started talking about the idea of a foundation to help the PALS in ways that others can't. Many organizations for ALS are tied to research for a cure, which is very important, but everyday living, the nuts and bolts of dealing day to day with ALS is so much more than many PALS and their families can handle. What would you do while you could still? What would you do if you still could? Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease, is a devastating, fatal neuromuscular disease that can strike anyone, anywhere, any age without warning. And as I was saying a little bit earlier tonight, ALS doesn't get the recognition that cancer does, because cancer doesn't turn over their stock quite as quickly as ALS does. Every 90 minutes there's an individual diagnosed with ALS, and every 90 minutes an individual dies of ALS. At any given time in this country, 300,000 people are living with ALS, and it's absolutely essential that we take our message to whoever we can, and that's what we're doing this evening. I'm proud to live in Avon. I'm proud to be able to come up and do an event like this in Avon, because so many times we have to travel to Rochester to an event, and so this is important to us. Today our friend Scott Pfeiffer fights for his last breath as his battle with the beast is close to the end. Diagnosed in 2007, age 45, married with 2 small children, this is becoming the normal for ALS families in the prime of their life. It is no longer the old man's disease as described as so many did years ago. ALS was named in 1869, and still today, almost 150 years later, we have no treatment and no cure. It didn't take long to see that working for the PALS would become our mission statement. Through the years, I have learned that ALS is a disease that does not just affect the patient. It affects the whole entire family and the community. Hearts for ALS will grow as we reach out to the general public and business sector about the needs of ALS patients and direct our focus within several counties here in the Western New York area. We've seen the communities care and want to help. They just don't know how, and they don't know what's needed. As simple as 3 little letters, they are we find that so many still do not know or understand what ALS is. ALS has two languages, sporadic and familial. Sporadic means anyone, anywhere, any age are affected. The typical age is between 40 and 60. But in the past 5 years, we are seeing an increase from ages 20 to 40. This age range has started the formation of young faces of ALS. To draw attention to this age group, they have gone out and taken their message to the people. Familial ALS is inherited from one generation to the next. Familial ALS, known as falls, is caused from a specific genetic defect that leads to mutation of the enzyme known as SOD1. This is what I have, but not all falls families are tied to the SOD1 gene, therefore leaving the genetic cause unidentified. Onset of ALS may be so subtle that the symptoms are frequently overlooked or misdiagnosed. And that is one of the problems that so many people have, is that they are misdiagnosed at an early stage, and they keep going and trying to find out, and by the time that they have found the diagnosis, they've lost 2 or 3 years in a time frame that they don't have to lose. Symptoms may include twitching, cramping, or stiffness of the muscles, muscle weakness affecting an arm or a leg, slurred speech, or difficulty chewing or swallowing. When I first knew Jeff had something going on, he had what Deb will call the wigglies, the swigglies, and it was like nerve endings and worms under the skin, and you could just see them moving. And we made light of it on the golf course in the early stages, and even before Jeff had the diagnosis. And then in August, he was officially diagnosed. So he went from about April to August and was diagnosed relatively quickly. Fortunately, he ended up with a very good doctor, and they identified it fairly soon. So from 2005 to the time that he passed in 2009, Jeff went from the wigglies to losing his hands, to losing his feet and arms and legs, and he ended up in a wheelchair, and he ended up, in a normal wheelchair. Then he ended up in a